So I'll turn it over for our second panel for the discussion with all of you to my colleague, the Director of Research at Acton Institute, John Pinheiro.
Thank you, Scott. I wanted to start off with one question, but I'm going to stay seated, if that's okay. Leo XIII in Rerum Novarum, one of his questions was, why do we work in the first place? And his answer was that we work to obtain property, to hold it to the benefit of our families. And so I heard a lot on this panel about the individual human person and about moral agency, but I wanted to bring us from the individual human person to the family and just ask, this would be for William and Michael, the greatest challenge posed by artificial intelligence to the foundational natural society of the family, which does not depend on the state for its existence, but is the primary vehicle of moral formation. That is the school of love where moral agency is first formed. But a little more specific question for Steve would be to look at those technological disruptions that you talked about that AI has on the family, and whether the impact on younger people in terms of work, that is a prediction. I believe that is happening, that is adversely affecting younger people disproportionately, and how would that impact fertility and thus family formation as well? And Michael, you started first. Maybe you could, yeah.
What's the effect of technology on the family specifically?
The greatest challenge posed by artificial intelligence.
I have to think about that. Okay, I have to think about that. That's a good question.
Well, you work at a think tank. That's good.
That's right. There are, well, I mean, like, I think if I were in Congress, I'd ask to revise and extend my remarks. But okay, I'll have to think about this more because I think there's many of them. I think that the fundamental challenge for family is connected to this concept of the lack of privacy, surveillance, and behavior modification. I think that's the area where the family's going to be hit the hardest, because this breeds, I think, an individualism, and it's very hard to do education. So if you think about this, education takes place at school, but the fundamental place is the family. The fundamental place where culture is passed down is the family. And I think the intrusion of like behavior modification and artificial, like, you know, AI algorithms, which are shaping parents, children, family activity, you know, like looking at the phone too much. And I don't just mean children, I mean myself. I think that, and I think that the technological society, I think there's something underlying this, and that AI is an amplification. So I'm not sure if this is directly like artificial intelligence, but the amplification of the technological society. You know, Del Noce, who you know I like a lot, is very insightful. He says, well, what happens in what he calls the pure bourgeois, where every single thing becomes an object of trade, it really commodifies everybody, including commodifies the family and commodifies the individuals within the family. And he says key to this is really the rejection of what he calls the objective order of values of tradition, family, and the objective order of values. And Del Noce explains that the hippie rejected technology and the objective order of values, but the modern yuppie embraced markets and reject and continue that rejection of objective order values to family, tradition, religion, the dignity of the human person, and everything becomes an object of trade. And so I would say that is probably the family. Artificial intelligence commodifies all of the relationships in the family and intrudes into the family, so that it undermines parents, it undermines love, and really is a challenge. And so I think we have to be able to, we live in a technological world in the digital revolution, but I think we have to, in a sense, create a protection around our deepest human relationships, marriage as well, because I think it impacts fertility, but I'm going to leave that to Steve.
So I guess quickly just on the development, sorry. So yes, I would say to start with what I ended with was John Paul II's remark that true progress consists in the development of the human person. And so from an economic standpoint, I do think that to the extent that young people are crowded out of the marketplace, find themselves in either low wage employment or unemployment, we would need to take that seriously as not only an economic concern, but also the development of a human person. What I would suggest is both worker and employer reflect a little more on the nature of wages, which is to say some occupations have highly skewed wages over time. And so it may be the case that companies are tempted to say, I'm not going to have these entry-level workers because I found artificial intelligence tools that will completely do what they would do for me otherwise. Well, perhaps a better approach is say, why don't you bring them in at a lower wage in sort of an apprenticeship fashion and get them to that place where they actually then are paid much higher wages 5 years down the road. You know, some occupations do that. Airlines are a good example of that. Very, very low wages up front. After a few years, significant increases. So that's one thing. And then lastly, fertility, certainly to the extent that individuals aren't earning the type of income that they need for family formation, they're going to defer marriage. Marriage and a decline in coupling. Marriage deferment is a significant explanatory variable in the rapid decline of fertility across the globe. So.
Can I add one thing? And that is fully automated luxury communism. I'm serious, that the transhumanist vision is fully automated luxury communism, and that we have like universal basic income and artificial intelligence does the work for us, and we don't have to worry about being upskilled, everything's deskilled, we're lazy. And I think this, there's something about, if we think about economy and ecos nomos, meaning household management, family, I think that it kind of this sense of that work, the dignity of work, the dignity of working together, the ability to be in relationship with one another, having more children, the lack of coupling, and then the lack of children, the lack of brothers and sisters, the lack of cousins. There isn't the ability to kind of go up against one another, and so you have this soliptical world, and then this affects both parents and children. So I think that fully automated luxury communism, which is a transhumanist dream, breaks down the dignity of work and then the dignity of working together, which is central to the family.
Simple answer, I think, is that AI threatens to mislead our children and we'll lose a generation. And that is, they hear the lie everywhere around them that AI systems are becoming conscious. And many will believe, well, there is no God, look at these machines. I think that's the great danger.
Okay, oh yes, thank you. Can you come down with the other microphone or help her, please?
For those who don't know me, my name is Dr. Jennifer Nolan. I'm the Executive Director of the Right to Life League in California and the founding president of Catholic Polytechnic University in Los Angeles. But we are developing a pro-life research institute, and there is so much discussion about humanity and the preservation of humanity and consciousness. What I'm wondering is there something that you could recommend that would be a good use of AI in the pro-life battle against abortion? How could we harness AI for the good in that battle?
So I guess maybe I'll give a shot at it, though I'm an economist. My wife is a family physician and a fertility care practitioner. She focuses on restorative reproductive medicine. And I think one of the things artificial intelligence has is promising is to be helping with diagnostic techniques for determining why it is that people have infertility, recurrent miscarriages, those sorts of things. I think the more we emphasize the importance of the fact that when a woman loses a baby, it is a real loss. I think too often there is lack of diagnostic curiosity. Oh, it just happens. You'll get pregnant again. Well, I think we need to have in the medical community treat it as seriously as, cardiac arrest. A life was just lost. I think if we help the medical community approach unborn life in that way as a culture, and artificial intelligence emphasizing that we need to heal in the body what is not functioning the way we would expect, I think that maybe is a starting point for artificial intelligence and reapproaching how we even look at life in the womb. If we're too dismissive of it, I think that we can just set that aside and have that same dismissive attitude in the broader pro-life movement. So perhaps that's one application.
That's a really interesting question. I'll take a somewhat different approach. Society tolerates abortion because enough people have been convinced that it's not really clear when a developing human becomes really human and therefore should have human rights. They've been deceived, lots of people. And I see this discussion of AI consciousness as an opportunity for us to engage in this discussion that a lot of people are asking now. Will these systems become conscious? And if we can give a clear answer as to why not and why humans are different from the moment of conception, that may persuade people, which ultimately is the solution. We have to persuade people that human dignity starts at conception, and abortion is murder there.
I'm not sure if this is this, but just to add on this, I think part of the challenge, of course, with the pro-life position in large language models is that large language models collect data from all over, and so we don't live in a pro-life culture. Western culture broadly is not pro-life, and we've accepted the things that Professor Bosl talked about. This is a question I don't know, but I know there are physicians here who might be able to say if this is correct or not. But I think two things related to Steve's point. Brian, you mentioned earlier that there's an ability for AI can read disease and a diagnostic better than most doctors, or not all doctors at this point. Well, is there a way to, one of the questions of part of the lie, it has to do with the philosophical question of the human being. There's a distinction between the person and the body. But the more we can actually know about the properties of the embryo and the fetus and the stages of development in utero, I think, plus imaging, I think just ultrasound imaging and improvements of that alone, I think have made people realize, oh, this is actually a baby. I mean, I know it sounds, for those of us who think about these things a lot of people don't think they're killing a baby. They just don't, they don't think about it. They don't actually realize that they killed someone until after. And then they're also inundated with, dishonesty about that. And there's existential crisis. There's existential crisis that people are sitting around, that women have frozen embryos and men, and this is weighing heavy on our souls. And they don't know exactly what it is. It's inarticulate anxiety, right? Which often is the case. So I just think imaging and the knowledge about what actually is happening and taking place in the stages of development has been a positive force for the pro-life movement. And I think, and Brian, you can correct me, that I think that would be another aspect where it is. But again, you're battling science. Are you going to follow the science or are you going to follow the algorithm? And I think there's a battle there.
Thank you very much. I am Marisol Hurtado from the Polytechnic University of Catalonia in Spain. My doctoral research focused on empowering individuals through emerging technologies. In my work, I support patients with chronic conditions become managers of their own health process through timely information, community assistance, and collaboration via social networks. They move from being passive recipients to active decision makers. From this perspective, I would like to hear your expert views on three critical questions. First, how can we ensure that people not only use artificial intelligence, but are also be able to manage, control, and direct it to their own benefit, and the broader public interest. By this mean, universal digital literacy, technology, and AI management capabilities, new mindsets and behaviors, responsible and conscientious use. The second, if citizens are empowered to use AI for personal and social advancement, could this become a true driver for equity rather than a source for dependent inequalities? And the third, and above all, how can we give AI the power to empower people, enable every individual to grow, improve, and fully participate in society? I strongly believe this is possible, but only through collective action. Therefore, I invite all of you to support and advance this vision, technology, and especially AI as a genuine source of human empowerment.
So I'm going to answer to some of those questions. I don't know, so I'm not sure how to answer the question. I mean, I think I would say Carl Worth, I think, explained a lot of that in his first presentation, which I think was valuable. That there's going to be inequity that's going to take place. There's always inequality and inequity, always, right? And we can make a distinction between inequality and inequity, but there's always going to be inequality, and there's also always going to be inequity because of just personal advantage and also because of sin and injustice. There's lots of reasons, but I think that one of the problems that we have, and I'm not sure how to do this, but I do think one of the problems we have is controlling your own data. I mean, this is like related to the point of surveillance and behavior modification that I brought up earlier. And like Jaron Lanier and others have written on this. I mean, so Google took a picture of your house. Did they pay you for it? Google's translation work and Facebook's translation work is because they took the translations of people on Facebook and in Google, and they took it and they used it, and they didn't pay you for it, right? And so I think, I'm not saying that there can be debates of that. My point is, I think we're going to be in a very difficult problem to how to ensure that people get to manage and control their digital lives. I don't think we have control of our digital lives right now. When you go to the airport, like you get your picture taken. You didn't choose to opt in. I think this is the other thing that's really difficult with AI I didn't mention in my talk. You can't opt out of AI the way you can opt out of social media. So I don't have to use Instagram, okay? I don't have to use Twitter. In fact, I should not use Twitter, but that's another thing. I don't have to do it. I can opt out of it. But artificial intelligence is running in the background of a host of things. There's no way I can opt out. I mean, Carl, I think you mentioned that as well. I mean, I'm not sure how you fully empower people to participate, apart from like access to rule of law, justice, private property, the institutions of justice that are required to participate in a market economy, and then some control of their own data as their own, as opposed to it doesn't belong to Google, it doesn't belong to the tech companies. That's, I think, a big deal. My colleagues might have an answer, or if you have a mic, Carl, you might have an answer.
Maybe if I could just offer a couple of economic reflections. On the one hand, I think that economists speak of skill-biased technological change, where advances in technology disproportionately help those who are already skilled and know how to make use of those technologies. So I think that is a concern. But one of the things that we really haven't discussed here is that there's, of course, two dimensions to the marketplace. There's one that is the production side. We have individuals finding new ways to do things in a much more efficient manner, getting output down or increase so that costs fall. But the other side of the market is the consumer, right? And so I think one of the things to address how to empower people and how to make sure that these things don't become bad for society is that for consumers to reflect a little bit more on how their consumption patterns dictate what companies end up doing. And so you find this a lot of times, so in Laudato Si, Pope Francis and back St. John Paul II both addressed many things about the consumer and how our own choices are influencing the way the market is shaped over time. And so earlier encyclicals were much more focused on the labor question from a production standpoint, from the employer standpoint, and over time you see this sort of progression in the encyclicals where they start saying, hey consumers, you have a responsibility too, because there's a whole demand side of the market which is going to dictate what the market produces. So I think that might be another answer. Is from our own conscience, our own perspective, we need to be thinking through these things. What is happening because of the choices I make in the marketplace as a consumer?
We have time for one more. Oh,
No,
sorry. You go ahead.
I was going to say, I really don't have much to add to this. But go ahead.
We have time for one more question.
My name is Brother Paul Bednarzik. I'm Superior General of the Congregation of Holy Cross. We have a whole generation of young people who are being formed by AI, and that is only going to increase more in the future, culturally as well as technologically. Some of these young people are aspiring or will aspire to priesthood and religious life. What advice would you give to those who are responsible for their religious formation in how to mentor them, how to guide them in the midst of all of this AI world that they live in?
So the question is to mentor those discerning priesthood and in formation.
Yes, there are people who are responsible for their formation.
So-
what advice would you give to those formators?
I'm going to give you great advice. It's amazing. Really, this is like, as Donald Trump would say, the greatest advice. Okay, I love this advice. Okay, I'm actually quite confident in this advice. So I would say that in Dom Chotard has this beautiful book, The Soul of the Apostolate, which you probably know. It's a beautiful book. He was a Cistercian. I think Pius XI said it was on his bedside table, so that's why I'm so confident it's great advice, because it's not mine. And I think he said something very beautiful, and I think it's very important. He said, unless we have an interior life, and I'm not saying I have one, I'm saying unless we have a good, solid, beautiful interior life, our apostolates will fail, and they will fail for three reasons. One, Jesus wants to be at the center of our apostolate. Number two, if he's not at the center of our apostolate, it will not be as successful. And three, we will crash and burn. We will fail. And I think that, in a sense, I was talking to one of the Dominicans earlier today about this, the challenge really of our lives, and I say this from my own experiences, there's so much noise. We're constantly filled with noise. We're constantly filled with entertainment. I think, I didn't actually even mention this in the talk, but I think entertainment, constant like pop music, pop movies, Instagram scrolling, this kind of, in a sense, pop life of entertainment is constant noise. And unless we can have silence, we can't hear the voice of God. If we don't have silence. And so if we think about our own lives, I mean, think about all the earworms of music that's in our mind, the scrolling, the attention. There's a lot of studies on the ability to like focus. If I just get a phone call or look at a text, I'm off, even for 5, 10, sometimes people think it's 20 minutes of shifting. And so that, I think, just deeply affects our ability to pray, our ability to sit in contemplation, to sit in silence and hear the voice of God. So I would say that, following Dom Chotard, and of course the great Francis de Sales, etc., but Dom Chotard really stresses like we must build the interior life, and that it's not so important, I think, as a layman, with children, and I don't need the priest to give me insight into like economics and technology. I need the priest to give me insight into theology and to spiritual theology. And I think, unless a priest or religious has an interior life, he can't give it. So that's what I would say, and that's why I think Dom Chotard's book is just kind of, obviously there's a lot of spiritual writing and, the great Carmelites, etc., but I think that's just like an immediate summary, as it were, of like not only Benedictine, but Carmelite spirituality. Anyway, so that's my great answer.
And that's our time.